The Eagles were 4 points short of winning the first Super Bowl. I believe it's the first Super Bowl in their history as a franchise. They've won NFL championships before. And they decided they needed to get better. That's what the draft is about. What they did this season, they locked in Jalen Hurts, former Alabama and Oklahoma quarterback. They've traded for DeAndre Swift, a former Georgia running back, to add to their backfield. But more than anything, they said, we're 4 points short of winning a Super Bowl against, I mean, to me, the best quarterback that is in the game right now, Patrick Mahomes. What do we need to do? We need to go out and draft three guys from Georgia. That's exactly what they did. Here's Howie Roseman, a former Gator, who had this to say about drafting guys from Georgia. He says, we've been fortunate to have chemistry. When you have guys new and coming into a new city and a football team, now they know each other. They have people they can rely on. They have people who have their back. It enhances our culture. Now, how does this relate to Georgia? Well, I mean, I think the obvious is that you're drafting three guys from Athens to come play on your team. I mean, listen, there's been much discussed about Jalen and what he can do. I'm going to talk about Jalen, Nolan, Keeley. I'm going to also talk about what Georgia's doing that gets them this many. They've had 25 guys drafted in 2 years. That is a record. That's never happened before. And that needs to be put into perspective. But the team that's taking advantage of that more than anyone, that's the Eagles, or the Eagles as they call it. And, the value you get for drafting Jalen at number 9 is insane. I mean, people want to discuss, Bryce Young, and I love Bryce Young. I think him and C.J. Stroud are the two guys in this draft as quarterbacks that could make it. Anthony Richardson has more upside probably than anybody in this draft. He could, if he plays to his potential, if he does everything he's supposed to do as a quarterback, and y'all can go ahead and at me, I don't care. He'll be the greatest quarterback of all time. Period. We have never seen anything like that guy. But can he play quarterback? The answer has been no. So when you start talking about everybody that's in this draft and what you can do moving forward with the guys that Georgia's developed, and make no mistake, these guys have been developed. Jalen Carter at 9 is a tremendous value. You're saving against your cap, etc. But why are these guys in that position? Why has this happened? There's a culture at Georgia, and there has been a culture at Georgia, okay, of guys working in the shadows, like, a Batman villain, to get to the position to where they're the guy. All right. This guy right here did not play his first season at Georgia. Kelee Ringo we've got a few of these left, these signed ones. Kelee Ringo, no one knew who he was, generally speaking, nationally until this moment. No one thought about Kelee Ringo. He didn't play in 2020. And then in 2021, he explodes on the scene, certainly in the final game of the season. Jalen Carter wasn't a starter in 2021. Not often. Now, he was a really good player. I thought he was probably their best player, but he didn't start. I mean, I don't know if that was, circumstantial or, that they had, Jordan, who now plays with him in Philadelphia, or they had Trayvon, who was the number 1 overall draft pick. I mean, how is it that all these guys are getting drafted? I mean, that's 8 first-round draft picks, y'all, in the in the last 2 years. There's programs that don't have 4 first-round draft picks. It's hard to be a first-round draft pick. And, I mean, my dirty secret is if you're a top 100 player in the draft, you're a good player. Like, you should be in the league for a while. That's just what it is. Now, how long, I don't know, and there's injuries and there's stuff that happens and all this stuff. But if you're a top 100 player, because there's any reason why guys don't get drafted, it could be positional need at that moment, or, there's, with Kelee Ringo, the reason Kelee Ringo fell, allegedly, according to NFL people, is he's gained weight between the combine and when he ran. That can't be the reason he fell that far. There's got to be another explanation for it. But, maybe they don't like the way that he can do two to three things really well, but right when the ball gets to the point of where he has to make a decision, he's not as good at that as he is the first two things, which is, at the line of scrimmage, tackling, and then also turning and running, all that stuff. I mean, Keely Ringo, it's very rare we see Georgia defenders that are not right with the wide receivers. The exception to that was the Ohio State game. I think that hurt Keely too. But, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to hurt a lot of defensive backs, period. And for all of Mel Kiper, who I think is great, for all of his repeating that Marvin Harrison Jr. stays in that game, Ohio State wins. I mean, he didn't have a second half catch. So up to the point he got his ass knocked out, which is, I shouldn't say it like that, but the point he got knocked out, he didn't have a catch. And that was pretty deep into the third quarter. Of course, he got knocked out, so he didn't play in the fourth quarter. So it's a legal hit. I don't know what to say. But there's no explanation. I mean, Georgia, 10 guys drafted off this team. And again, Ryan and I were talking about this Saturday, and I think this is really the quintessential question of everybody in college football right now in terms of chase, because everybody's chasing Georgia. Now, I don't think there's a lot of times you can say that in college football. Everybody was chasing Alabama. I don't, there really wasn't. I mean, maybe for a moment with Florida in the 2000s, SC in the 2000s, in the 90s, maybe Nebraska. But it's a different sport now, almost. And I think the real challenge for everybody now is, how do you stop this train at Georgia? I mean, are they going to have to screw it up? Maybe. There's some of that too. But, man, they just replaced their defensive coordinator and won a national championship. What makes you think they can't replace their offensive coordinator and win the national championship? I mean, they can. And by the way, if they don't win the national championship in 2023, it's not like it's some sort of failure. But what the Eagles are hitting on is there are really good players at Georgia. And those really good players are being pushed all the time. I mean, the Eagles, to me, clearly understand value more than anything else. I mean, when you look at getting Keely, that, someone needed to get him. I mean, he is a top 100 player. He went at 105. To get Jalen at 9, to get Nolan at 30. I mean, there was some discussion he was a top 15 guy. Now, the thing about the NFL, for those of you watching, you're mainly Georgia folks. The thing about the NFL is you can't really know what reality is. That's the problem. Is these franchises are hell-bent on what they're doing, and there's not just 32 variables. There's 32 variables times 300 or 200 and whatever the number is for the players. So it's a consistently moving amoeba of things. But with Georgia players lately, you've seen the production. That's the thing. I mean, you look at Roquan Smith, who signed with Mark Richt and company, and really came into his own under Kirby's time. I don't think I need the same exact scenario with Nick Chubb. I mean, that guy. I don't think you should draft running backs in the first round. I just think it's a bad mistake. I think the Falcons reached, but whatever. I don't care about the Falcons. Yeah, that's y'all's problem. But I don't think you do that. I don't care. Todd Gurley was probably the only person I would have drafted in the first round. And you saw, I mean, Todd had a great but limited career. They just don't have a long time. So that I'm just against that, generally speaking, because that's not the game anymore. It's about quarterbacks making quick decisions, having athleticism. It's essentially what Georgia has had with Stetson Bennett over the last 2 years, a playmaking quarterback who has the capability to run. And with the Eagles seeing that, you're taking a guy in Nolan Smith who pressures the quarterback, who affects the quarterback. That's an important moment in things. Why did Broderick Jones go number 14 overall? He's protecting the quarterback. Nolan Smith, he's going to rush the quarterback. Keely, he's defending against the quarterback. Stetson, he is the quarterback. Christopher Smith, he's defending against the pass. Robert Bill, he is a pass rusher. Warren McClendon, he is an offensive lineman. Last guy drafted for Georgia, Kenny McIntosh. It's a running back. I mean, Kenny's better than a seventh round guy. I don't know how much better, but that's probably a little bit too low. But it's because of what he plays, in my view. And I think, that's what this game is anymore. And what the Eagles are trying to do, and you've seen this, is they're saying, we're not going to let anybody run, period. They're not running on us. So quarterback, whoever, they're not running on us. And that's why they had that lead in the Super Bowl and they lost it because they were playing the best quarterback in the game today. But, this is a passing game. It's become that. But if you can run, you're done. I mean, the other team is done. So that's what Philly's done. They said, hey, you're not running. At Georgia, Kirby and them have said or have shown they're not going to allow other teams to run. 2 of the last 3 years, the number one rush defense has been the Dogs. So when you wonder why the Eagles are taking Georgia players, it's because they produce. That's all there is to it.